No.
All right, I'm gonna be a little clumsy when I go through this because I don't have some of my paperwork. Oh, yes, I do. Course core.
I just have one page for you.
Yes, sir.
So,
Okay. We'll go ahead and call this subcommittee meeting to order.
Okay.
I'd like to recognize General for comments regarding the military department. Thank you, sir, for coming today.
you're right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have with me today Philip Parker, retired Brigadier General. He oversees our state resources. So any money you give me goes to his office and he distributes and matches it to federal money. He's the guy who makes it work. I got Chris Thomas with me, Colonel Chris Thomas, and then Harrison. You know everybody too, don't you? So Harrison Matheny, I've got Harrison with me. So we're here to represent the Mississippi National Guard. I can direct you to my handout if you'd like, and just tell you that we are probably asking, like most folks, for an inflation increase. Our utility costs have gone up about $200,000. Our payroll adjustments need to be increased a little bit. And so this request simply reflects those increases. And then the big talking item would be our tuition assistance program. So let me talk that for a minute and then I'll get back to the others. So last year, y'all were kind enough to send us an additional $2 million, which our program needed. We actually funded a little over $3 million in student assistance for tuition. So that was the right number. Okay. For this next year, we are asking for an additional $350,000 just to take care of growing the program. And so two things on the seat. If you'll look at your box at the top of the page, you'll see education enhancement funds, $2 million. That was last year's appropriation. We're asking to move that to our general fund and increase it by $350,000 over there. The general fund, I'll just be frank with you guys. The general fund, if we put in the general fund, if I have a little bit left over, I'm able to roll that into my tuition program for the next year. If I leave it in the education enhancement fund, I lose it if I don't use it. And I would prefer to try to bank some money for future growth. We currently are at about 450 students in our program. The states around us have 600 in their program each. So we feel like 600 is a future number that we will achieve as we grow this program. So that's what we're hoping we can do with that. We feel like we are on the number, so we don't expect any rollover money. But if we do have some small numbers, we'd like to just keep that on our books for use the following year. We've asked for a little bit of increase on the museum, again, for our payroll and expenses. The 413 you see up there for support, that's a little bit of payroll, and the majority of it's utilities and those type of expenses. At the bottom, you'll see a summary of what we're asking for. The 11,462,845, which includes our SEEP and the pins. We asked for you to leave our pins the same because our pins are federally funded. So there's nothing for the state of Mississippi to gain when they reduce our pins, because that's just federal money that we're giving up. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll stop there and be glad to answer any questions for the committee.
Members of the committee have any questions?
Kind of our own staff, why was our pins cut by LBR? They were vacant. Just because of vacant? Yes, sir.
Those are snapshot pins that were vacant, if they were vacant upon October, whatever the date was.
Yeah, we have 900 state employees typically, and those pins will be vacant as we hire new people and transition people in and out. But
General, excuse me for interrupting you.
No, please.
The salaries amount of the 11.1 million that was removed, those are federal or other state special funds or special fund pins, or not general fund pins, correct?
So the 886 are the number of employees we have that are on the receiving state payroll. 850 of those are federally reimbursed.
Okay.
Okay. And the remainder of that we pay with state money, but those are usually like people mowing the grass at Camp Shelby. They're lower end jobs, typically what those are. And the tag, another lower end job. So. So it's me and the guys cutting the grass, I guess. So, let's see what else. Because I am 100% payroll, so I'm not totally funded.
You mentioned, a lot of, I guess, additional funds. Scholarship program, like where like the Air Force gives their cost of the program.
Yeah, so I can do that. So when we first put this request together, the Air Force had a tuition program where they were paying federal tuition assistance for our Air Guardsmen. At the beginning of this fiscal year, they dropped that assistance. So now I'm paying 100% of any Air Force recruit. We didn't anticipate that, but because our numbers a little lower than we had anticipated, the $3 million was still the right money, although we thought we were getting federal tuition assistance from the Air Force. So we expect it to grow. I mean, we're just at the low water mark at this point. Does that make sense to you? Because I'm not getting any assistance from the Air Force. And we're going to get a little relief because Southern Mississippi has just announced that they're lowering their per hour cost. So that's going to help us grow the program with the same money, but we still think our number is going to push it to 350. In fact, we were originally thinking that we were going to ask you for $500,000, but because Southern reduced their cost per hour and we expect some universities to follow, we've adjusted that down to 350. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I know that when they originally funded the program, that 2 million included everybody, but there's a change late after they're out of session that the Air Force now. I just wanted.
That's correct. Yeah, the Air Force made that change after you funded the program.
Correct. So that it was originally going on.
That's correct. We're still within budget, so that's a good news story.
Do you have any data that shows where these opportunities, which IHLs or community colleges, these scholarships have gone to?
We do. I can provide that for you.
We've got
got a
curious
spreadsheet.
anecdotally, just what it.
I will tell you that Southern actually has about 91 enrolled in the program, both Air Force and Army. I will tell you, state's probably about 100, a little over 100, and then everybody else is much slower below that. So,
And this is only available for active duty or for guardsmen that are your normal guardsmen. In other words, it's not for ROTC classes or anything like that, correct?
correct. So this is available just for Mississippi National Guardsmen, Air Force, and Army. The reserves have a different program that's federally funded, and active duty has, they get different money. They get bigger bonuses than we do. So a kid doing driving a tank for us gets a $20,000 bonus. The Army will give them $40,000. So we're competing against active duty. This helps us compete with active duty.
Okay. Any other questions about the committee? Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, good to see you. So I noticed that you are $2 million. Is that just because you feel more comfortable with the general fund, or is there some technical aspect of that?
Well, we think you're talking about the seat money, correct?
Right.
So
Money go out, and then you're requesting be funded by general fund for education enhancement fund.
correct. It gives us a little flexibility, Mr. Chairman. We just, if it stays in the education enhanced funds, if we don't use it, we lose it. We feel like with this program growing, that if we miss some projections, we'd like to have a little extra money on hand to pay these scholarships to students in the next fiscal year, to be very frank with you. We are currently at 400 men and women in our program. Our neighbors have 600 in their program. So we think this thing will do nothing but increase. And so that's that's the reason we're asking for that shift.
Sorry, yeah, I haven't looked at the budget in a while, but. Doesn't laugh, I mean, the EF, I know, but I would guess your general fund probably laughs too, if you didn't utilize it for the year, you know.
So Philip, I'll let you take the mic. So Philip manages this money for us. I'll let him explain that to
But the
you.
general funds, they do, except we had the ability to move. And I can tell you what the account is called. I'll call it a special account. I don't know if it's probably the right word, but we can move those funds into that account so they don't elapse. We do that for things when we're doing major MilCon projects that go beyond the fiscal year, they go year, through the year, so we can move that money that we can have available to use throughout the course of that project. And this is the same thing he's referring to with this money. With it sits in the general fund or in this the enhancement fund, the year end, when it ends, it's over, from that standpoint. So it gives us the ability to use it beyond the end of the fiscal year. A lot of times, just through the course of the year, especially in the spring and summer semesters of schools, we don't get the invoices back from the universities in time to bill everything against that fund. So this would also help us, close that gap with that timing. Is it,
When you're billing cycle.
technical side.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And I don't think it's a big number. We're thinking it's $50,000, $100,000. We just don't think it's a big number. Because we feel confident about our projections. So
It's not that the way it's set up now that it does not work, that we do not get the money. It's just a matter of mechanics of it, the flexibility of it.
Okay, with the last minute that we have here left, do you have any request in for ARPA money for any capital expenses or do you have a list of those projects?
we have those. We can give them to you. We have those with us, Chris. Is that correct?
I got it right here.
But no, we have been building those lists and giving those lists to those chairmen. We're glad to share that with you. So this is our ARPA list. I would tell you that the top line item is probably critical. The next item is to finish up the project that you began with the $10 million you gave us last year. And then the last two items, to be very frank with you, if you need to spend ARPA money, those are two projects you can spend ARPA money on.
We got a bunch of those.
Well, you don't want to leave any in the bank. I understand that. So those are some opportunities for y'all.
Okay.
And we've communicated that with Chairman Polk, I believe. So. Okay.
I want to follow up with you on that, on these types of projects a little bit later, but anyone else, you have any other questions? You have any questions? Okay. Obviously, we're glad to work with you. Anything we can do to help out, like to appreciate, or we appreciate you and everything that you do. We're here for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it. If you've got about it, yeah, go ahead, it's right there.
Not talking if you're two guys.
Okay, thank y'all.
Here, there, where? Right there, son. Okay.
Hey, how are you doing? Good to see you.
See you.
Hey, Scott Delano, good to see you. Hey, Ryan. Hey, it's very good to see you. How you doing?
You know, man. Yeah, I did.
Okay. While they're handing this out, Commissioner, I want to say, welcome. Thank you for coming back over, seeing us. As we go through this hearing today, just remind you that we are being recorded and on our YouTube channel. So when you make your comments, please make them or direct them into the microphone so that people can hear it as well. These microphones are a little old, and if you don't speak right into them, you never get the proper volume. Go ahead and open the hearing up if you're.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank y'all for having us here today. And on behalf of our 647 employees, we thank you for what you've done for us over the past year and look forward to continue to work for you. To come as a year coming forward here, but I have Brian Ferguson and Daphne Daniel with me, and we'll all be available to answer any questions after I have a little brief presentation here, and I'm not going to bore you with reading it word for word. And then after that, we have some handouts, and then I think some of those handouts should draw enough interest that you might have some questions. We'll be happy to do our best to try to answer them. But as you know, over the last couple of years, parks has been a priority for the legislature, and it's been our priority. And we think we're off to a really good start trying to get these parks where the legislature and the people of the state of Mississippi want them to be. Y'all been mighty gracious to us over the last couple of years, and we've received 28 million ARPA funds last year, or actually for this fiscal year. And we spent somewhere between 11 and 13 million dollars on campground upgrades, enhancements to enhancing pads, electrical upgrades, and other amenities within the park. We spent 3 million on furnishing and equipment cabins statewide. We've already ordered some of that furniture. We have 10 million marked in capital expense funds for state parks and Natural Science Museum for improvements over there at those two buildings. We have 2.9 at the Natural Science Museum for emissions improvements and security over there. We're growing a very big complex across the street there at the Florida Bluff Strait Park. We have a big new playground. It's had over 100,000 people visited since it's been there, and been voted one of the best attractions in the state by several different people, and getting a lot of use, which means a lot of people, which means security enhancements and cameras and things of that nature, and security people for that matter. We've really went to work on Roosevelt State Park, putting some model cabins in over there. We've been wanting to get you guys over to take a look at them. Got some pictures in the brochure there, and we're getting ready to get some more parks on the way. I'll get to those a little further. We've took a business approach to this, redoing this state park plan. We've tried to involve the communities that these parks are in. And we've actually hired University of Southern Mississippi to help us create some business plans for each of these parks. One of the things we intend to do is not just a renovation of cabins or camp pads, but we're trying to look at renovating the entire park as we go through there, from infrastructure to clean up to having our biologists go in there, do work to We want to make these parks attractive for wildlife, where folks can come in there and see wildlife. They'll be able to see the lake when they come in there, with the trees cut back. Just what we try to do, whatever we think we see going to the park. We've already had a major cleanup day at Roosevelt. We'll have a major cleanup day at every park. If it's trees need cutting, if it's gravel needs put in places, that we intend to try to get all that done and make it a whole park renovation rather than just a cabin, pad, and electrical system type upgrade. We're trying to do it the way we think y'all want it done. We've also been active in trying to talk to MDA and their Visit Mississippi programs they have about trying to get us into a marketing system there and help us market these parks a little bit better. We don't have a lot to market right now, but we want to start marketing it from the standpoint of we're fixing to have something you're going to really be proud of and you're going to want to come to. We're in the process of putting in a new vendor system for our state parks. Going to make it a lot easier to make reservations online, and we think that'll be a big improvement, as well as we're starting to talk with Ateneo, who is a new vendor, about some electronic gates. We want to get that process a little better off there. And we've also, over the course of the last few months and over the summer, we've talked to a lot of different legislators who attended some of these park meetings and about the different projects they want to see done, and talked to some of our budget analysts about how much money it take to do some of those projects. Another project we undertook was trying to get all the electrical systems within our state parks moved over to the electrical power providers. We've just piecemealed them for years, and they're old and they're antiquated, and we're dealing with Mississippi Power on Buccaneer, Energy on 4 parks, and we're looking to get some estimates in for the EPAs any day now for each, how much it take that money to go in there and revamp those systems and bring them up to standard. And then when they get brought up to standard, they would take them over and run them here on out. I want to just touch on a couple other bureaus we're working on. As you know, we have our law enforcement bureau, and we just recently graduated 9 cadets, and we're getting ready to start another class. We always hope to try to graduate at least 15 out of a class. Sometimes that don't work, but we usually start out at around 200 applications, and it's screened down to about after the physical down to about 75, and then after the background checks, you to get around 30. And out of that 30, we hope to graduate 15. We have an extensive course they go through. Not only do they go through the law enforcement training academy, but they go through our own training academy that's specifically geared to the some of the things that they do. Not only they're on the roads, but they're in the woods, as you all know, and we feel like they're some of the best trained law enforcement officers in the state when they finish 24 weeks of the 2 different academies. We just recently received an additional $500,000 from Blue Cross Blue Shield to add some murals and some landscaping around some of the new park facilities we have over there that I'd already mentioned earlier. We're just going to start here sometime next week, I think, with a new entrance over there, a joint entrance to the park, to the Children's Museum and the Science Museum there. And regrettably, we're still dealing with CWD over there. We've collected over 6,000 samples this year, and regrettably to say we're up to 63 positive that we've collected this year in the state. And I can get you guys some maps to see exactly where they are. They're mostly in North Mississippi. They're still concentrated, but they're starting to pop up on the surrounding states, Alabama and Louisiana, which are not far from our east and west borders there. So we're concerned about that. Won't bore you anymore with any of that stuff, but I told you we try to answer any questions, but I do have a 1-pager at the very back of the page I'm talking from here. And that's why we're here today, is to tell you, what we think we need to continue running the agency the way you want it ran. And that would include about 13.2 million out of general fund, restore the general funds there, 7.2 in park salaries, 3.8 museum salaries, be 387,000 to fund our career ladder, 400,000 to continue working on chronic wasting disease, security issues there at complex I mentioned earlier. The 95,000 would help to work on that security. You've always put 58,000 in our hunter education program, and we're concerned about that 5% increase that PERS passed, and would hope that you would look at maybe addressing that. We need special fund authority for about 73 million there. And then we like ask an additional 4.5 million for our the capital expense fund there to continue matching that. This will be the third match you've given us. We've leveraged that up to 13.5 million that we've been able to get from federal funds. So we think we're doing you a good job there in leveraging that money that you're giving us. We'd like to have our pens reinstated. We'd like to have the ARPA funds again this year to continue our wastewater and park tourism improvements and enhancements. I know y'all are working on the IRS letter there, and but just wanted to mention that we were one of the agencies that received a demand letter from the IRS, and we are having to address that. And of course, y'all were really kind to all of our agency employees there with SEC squared stuff to put through. But we do want to just mention to you that we'd like to, if we move forward, we'd like to, we have been working with state personnel board and would like to work with y'all to ensure that our law enforcement officers their salaries remain competitive with other law enforcement agencies across the state. And we'd be happy to go through this park improvement plan. I was going to let Brian Ferguson do that if you'd like next, or we'll answer questions at this point in time.
We have about 15 minutes remaining in our hearing. I do have some questions about the budget stuff. I do want to get to the capital improvement plan. But let me get through the budget questions first. So first of all, do y'all have questions regarding the budget itself? Mr. Chairman? Senator Seymour?
No. Thank you. Senator Posey, how many pens do we have in law enforcement now, boots on the ground?
Active officers, 165.
We gonna make any improvement? I mean, are we retiring faster than we can get?
It's tough. It's tough. It's a revolving circle. You got probably 30 officers that we retired a day, and we graduated a class last year of 15 and just graduated 9. And we've got another class we're trying to get ready to go. Start them in March, graduate them in August. Thank you. Yes, sir.
All right. I'm going to have some other questions about the general fund stuff that we can talk about later. I want to understand your ARPA request and then some of the information that is provided in the capital improvement plan. You have a total, or on this budget request, you have a total of 28 million in ARPA funds. That's for this upcoming fiscal year, correct? That's your request.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
All right. Last year, we gave you a 28 million.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So does the 28 million, or how far within your 5-year comprehensive plan, the 3 phases, will the existing 28 million and these other matching funds that you've got, how far will it get you through?
Well, we just recently got the release of the ARPA funds, but I'm gonna let Brian address that. He's dealt more with DFA than I have on the ARPA funds.
Yes, sir. So in our phase 1, just kind of orient you with this. This is the phase 1 part is what we've used the current 28 million for. In the wastewater portion, we're currently about 7 million in actual projected expenses for that. We have those plans already completed and at DFA ready to go. Have identified about 5 million more to expend the rest of that 12 million. And we'll be looking for the others. We have that's only 5 parks that we've taken care of with that 12 million in wastewater. The 16 million is what we're using to renovate mostly campgrounds, which will include electrical, Wi-Fi, fiber lines ran, and water at the specific sites. That's only 5 parks too. That's in the phase 1 plan. This next request will start to move into our phase 2. We already have the phase 2 capital improvement money that was appropriated last year, but what we're asking for this new 28 million will address our phase 2 parks for RV, site rental, and new amenities at the next 5 parks that we're going to do.
Okay. The maintenance of the parks, or excuse me, maintenance of the cabins, the cleaning and stuff like that, is that done with state pen employees or is it contracted out?
Mostly has been contracted out in the past. We've moved most of those, well, a lot of those employees to state pen employees now due to a lot of what the peer report conveyed last year. So we took that advice, moved a lot of those people to full-time position that were long-time contract employees.
I don't expect you to have this now, but if you would at some point in time, I think I brought this up last year, but I would really like to see what the cost of operations and maintenance for those cabins are, to understand the revenue that we generate from it versus, less our cost, to find out what kind of our ROI that we're getting for the investments that we're making on the cabins, on the new cabins. And then I would like to also get some type of projection on revenue for the campsites, the new campsites that are being improved with the extra amenities. And will you be charging for Wi-Fi in the sites?
Yes, so we will have a separate circuit for those. So there would be we hadn't decided on whether it'd be a charge or if we would add the charge to the actual rental of the site. So we don't know if it'll be a
We
separate charge.
recently worked with the commission to get a lot of flexibility in our fees, especially for the new kind, because the pricing we had just wasn't getting the job done, and people will pay more for these better sites. We understand that, and we're going to try to quickly.
Yes, with respect to Wi-Fi, I just know from my personal experiences that I've seen it where it's managed or it's provided by the facility. And then I've also seen it where they've gone out and had a vendor go out and charge $19 a night or something crazy for Wi-Fi. But if that's the only connectivity that you have, you're kind of stuck. I just would like to have an idea of what your plans are.
A lot of the EPAs that we're dealing with on electric structure are putting in Wi-Fi stuff. So we're trying to work closer with them to see if we can't, work in a reasonable cost with them, the Wi-Fi.
Okay, so going back to your phase one, you're pretty much already through all of your A&E. You're into construction phase for most of your phase one projects, correct?
We are, we'll be opening, we've opened bids for one in December. So we hadn't started the first construction project for this phase one will be in Natchez, and that construction starts on February 1st this year. We'll open bids for Percy Quinn on the 31st of January, and Roosevelt should be coming March. Roosevelt and Clarko should be coming next. So we hadn't started the actual construction phase, but we finished the design development, all the architecture work and all that, just waiting on bids to be submitted now.
Let me just add one thing, just for y'all's information on the Percy Quinn bid we put in. We had to rebid that. We had a projected cost of 2.6 million for renovation of the cabins and stuff down there. We only got one bid, came in at 7.1 million. And we had to break it up. We decided, that's not the way to go. Obviously didn't take that bid, we broke it down into 3 phases now, hoping to get more people involved in bidding. And but obviously the bids it's going to be a lot more costly than we hoped it would be.
I understand that we have some core or some issues with archives and history on some of the cabins. And I know we talked about this a lot last year. I'm just very concerned about ROI, a true ROI for cabins, because of the enormous cost and upkeep and the maintenance of those. So I've always been very concerned about it, but I know that the cost side is going through the roof on as far as new construction. It's a heck of a lot different than erosion control or pouring new pads or improving water connections or whatever on campsites. And that seems to be where the sweet spot is with most of our revenue that is generated at the parks. But I would ask you to give us some additional information on that, because I think you're going to find that, as you know, you're going to see this across the board on these new construction projects. But going back to phase two, looking at phase two, it looks like you are moving forward with a lot of your A&E, and you've got a lot of that already completed, and you're awaiting for where you've already received ARPA approval for several of these, and you're waiting for DFA on a couple of the others. And that's part of the 28 million that you got from last year, correct?
Yes, sir. Most of those projects, well, all these projects have a design development completed on them, project plans already. Percy Quinn being one we've already done work there before. So we're really just waiting on, and I think DFA went through an audit process of ensuring that those funds were appropriately spent. We finished that. So we should be ready to, when they release those funds, bid those projects immediately.
Any other questions from the committee? Senator Butler, do you have any questions? All right, give me 1 second if you don't mind. Go ahead, Senator.
Director, this is all the budget stuff. What is y'all stance gonna be on the sale of whitetail deer?
Of course, that's not a policy, that's a policy issue, and my stance is basically that is a legislature sets a policy and or the commission sets a policy depending on how y'all wind up dealing with it.
He's been around a while. Commissioner, thank you very much. Do you have anything else that you would like to add?
No, we just appreciate y'all's time and looking at our budget request, and we continue to do the best we know how with the money you give us.
And you know that this is a long process. Please feel free to contact me with anything else that you
I have
have.
some, I would love to get with you here.
Appreciate
too
it.
long.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
sir.
appreciate your time today. Hey, we're a little bit early. That's good. I wonder if the Commissioner of Agriculture is even in the building yet. Oh. You sit wherever you like. By the way, it's all day long, but I sent that to a couple of people. How you doing? Who? Yeah. How are you doing today? Very nice to meet you. Thank you. Yeah, it seems. We see all. Chairman. Give me just 1 second to kind of get going, but while we're doing this, Commissioner, I'm going to remind you that we're on, that we are being recorded. So if you would make your comments into the microphone.
I'm be glad. Is this one on?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
And
good.
if
Can
you
hear me
speak
now?
right into it, you'll be in good shape.
Good, good. Thank
All ready
you.
to go? We all ready to go? All right.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee and guests. I'm Andy Gibson. I'm the Commissioner of Agriculture and Commerce, and with me are some of my key staff. We've got Chris McDonald, who is our Director of Federal Affairs, Joette Pickles, our Budget Director, Michael Lasker is the Fairgrounds Director. And I think that's everybody. And if it's all right, Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do today is what I did in the House to make it sort of an easier presentation, to talk about what I call the primary agency, the Department of Agriculture and Commerce first, and then shift gears and talk about the 100% special funds fairgrounds operations that are really exciting to talk about. Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, that is fine.
Okay, thank you.
Looking at this, does everybody have the handout, that we brought this handout, our budget hearing presentation? On the second page, you see all the responsibilities of the Department of Agriculture under 69-1-1. And I won't get into all of those, but as you can see, we touch every aspect, not only of agriculture, but of commerce in the state of Mississippi. And I'm really proud of our team because we are, and have been for some time, a majority special fund agency, meaning that the general fund taxpayers of the state of Mississippi are not funding most of the bill of this operation. It is generated by funds that are paid by the users of these services and the fees that are generated. So we're proud of that. The budget that we bring to you today does have some increases compared to last year. And the reason for that are some sort of special particular issues, some of which are driven by your SEC2 program that the legislature passed, and some of which are related to our need for vehicles that we've not been able to replace in 2 years, 22 vehicles. We've not been able to find vehicles. I bet you've heard that from other agencies. And then there are additional security costs related to the fairgrounds operations and other costs in general. The cost of commodities going up, equipment, we have a plan to put in, and we desperately need to put in a high-speed wireless Wi-Fi on the 105-acre fairgrounds campus and some other museum and coliseum upgrades. That drives the $5.6 million extra funding that we requested. Of that, as a placeholder, and I know this is subject to change, but we didn't know how to calculate the salaries. We came in at calculating 1.4 million for the SEC implementation. I know that's subject to change. Last year, we didn't know what it would be either until the end of the budgeting process, and we expect that number is probably high. It probably needs to come down as you get through with the personnel board process and all that. Also, in part of that is the increase of commodities. As you know, everything has gone up in cost. We've got 156,000. We don't have a lot of travel costs. We've gotten to the point that we do a lot of our travel more efficiently, and we do a lot more Zoom calls than we used to do in the wake of COVID. We do have these equipment funds that we're requesting, $779,750. And that does include that Wi-Fi wireless capability on the fairgrounds. That, when I get to the fairgrounds, I'll talk about how that will be a money maker for the state of Mississippi. We're losing revenue as it is, ticketing wise. And then the vehicles, that's 1.28 million. That would cover the 22 vehicles that are in need of replacement. Every one of those 22 vehicles in our fleet are 7 years old and 150,000 miles. So they all meet that threshold to be replaced. We are asking for the funds to replace them. One of the vehicles is a big 18-wheeler truck that we use in our weights and measures operation. It needs replacing, but that 1.2 million includes that big ticket item. And if we get the funding for that, it will be put toward replacing that fleet. We do need to retain all of our 239 positions. The elbow recommendations included some cuts to those. Right now today, we already have 218 currently filled. We have 21 in active recruitment, but like everybody else, it's hard to get these positions filled, but they desperately need to be filled. And so that only leaves one vacant. We need to keep our positions as we can. A lot of them were given up last year. So we've got an aging fleet. Repair costs have been expensive. As you know, not only do we operate the fairgrounds, but we have the Ag Museum that is 40 years old this year. And we've done a lot of repairs over there. A lot of repairs need to be done. And those costs are expensive, and they will be ongoing as we continue to maintain the operations. The museum and coliseum upgrades that I mentioned. And then I'll just mention this. This is not a big deal because it's important. We don't mind. But we have the livestock shows in all 82 counties that we support. Every county livestock show gets premium money. The legislature has funded $211,540 of that. We've been subsidizing it because that's not sufficient for the growing program, the number of kids involved. Last year, we totaled almost $300,000, $291,717. Now that's a good problem to have. It means we have more kids involved in livestock shows, more youth in 4-H and FFA than we've had. But I've just mentioned that because when we have more youth participating, there's more premium money and there's more prize money that needs to go out. We've been eating that cost as an agency, and we've been happy to do it. But I just put that before you. It would be good to have that plussed up. Let's see. Look, that is an overview of the main agency. And I'll take any questions if you have any on that. Anybody?
Now, did you haven't gotten to your other special funds?
I have not touched it. Now, even I will say this, even in the what I call the primary agency, we're still majority special funds. The fairgrounds is 100% special funds. It lives off of the income, the revenues that it has, and we run it like a business. And I'm excited to tell you about some things happening there.
Well, I'm gonna ask you to pause for just 1 second. Do you have any questions up at this point? Senator Butler.
So every county, Mr. Chairman, has a 4-H, most every county has a 4-H program that is through Mississippi State Extension, and then that Future Farmers of America, FFA, that is funded through the Department of Education. We don't have anything to do with that. Where we get involved is when these children, who are our next generation of leaders, come to the county shows to show their swine or their chickens or we've even just started a rabbit show for the more suburban kids that don't have room for a cow or a hog or a goat or a lamb. More children involved coming to these shows, and we award prizes. So that's where the prize money. And the truth of the matter is it's growing so fast. Not only are we running out of room over here on the fairgrounds, but we run out of prize money appropriations. So if we could take it to 300,000, that would get us by for now. But I see it growing into the future. I really do. And I think it's a good thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Seymour.
With the Dr. Watson and what's happening with bird flu,
It's been a crisis.
what effect is it having on the agency in general?
So I want to commend Dr. Watson, the Board of Animal Health. When at the time the bird flu hit Mississippi, we've had one major outbreak in December. At that time, 42 other states had it. We knew it was a matter of time we would get it. When it was showing up in our ducks on the river flyway, we knew it would come. When it came, they were Johnny on the spot. They already had partnered with USDA to have a response mechanism in place. We simply provide them support. As far as funding, we're not funding those operations, but we're supporting him. For example, on the fairgrounds, when they need to assemble and go out as a team, or when they need vehicles to use, we're able to help with that. But we don't. It has not impacted us per se, although we're very acutely aware of it, and it is a crisis for our state's largest industry. Chicken, the #1 industry in the state of Mississippi. Every state that has one case of bird flu, it shuts down international trade to many, many nations on the other side of the world. They won't let our chicken products come in over there. So that has been a real big problem for our poultry producers, not to mention the eggs. 42 million layers across America have been killed by this virus. And that's many times more than the number of eggs that would have been produced. The flocks are having to be rebuilt. We need to really, really keep a handle on this. And the good news is, I think we've got a really great team in Mississippi to respond. That's all we can do is respond, to take preventative measures to try to keep it out of these flocks. But when it does happen, respond immediately. And and have the virus destroyed? Good question. Thank you.
Yeah, on that note, Commissioner. In our discussions yesterday with Animal Health Board, it's pretty important. I mean, we can see what the issues are and see how critical it is for them to have a timely response. We also talked with MEMA about kind of the same situation or the same scenarios, and making sure that we have proper standard operating procedures in place and quick strike plans where necessary. I think we're going to try to have another conversation about that. And obviously you're going to need to be involved in that conversation as we move forward. But I want to make sure that we don't have an overlap in coverages, but I want it to be very clearly defined as to who's doing what in the response side of things, and then make sure that we know what we're going to be reimbursed for by USDA, so that we don't end up with non-reimbursable expenses that we should have known about.
That's right. I serve on the board of animal health, so we are involved in those discussions. And when there is a crisis, we respond. But I think Dr. Watson, I didn't hear his presentation here, but I heard the one in the House, and I think it shows you how prepared we are as a state. Now, today there are 47 states with this outbreak. The good news is, if there is good news, if things hold up like they have in the past, hot weather kills this virus. So the hotter it gets, the lesser risk it will be. And we need that to happen. Although, like all viruses, it mutates, and we can't predict exactly how it may mutate. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay.
Go ahead and proceed.
Shifting to the fairgrounds, as you know, Mr. Chairman, with the support of the Senate and with the Lieutenant Governor's support, during COVID-19, what used to be the Fair Commission, a standalone agency with had cast of board members, that Fair Commission was abolished and placed under the authority of the Department of Agriculture. I think that was a good move. I supported that then. I support it now. One of the reasons I supported it was I felt like we could run it more efficiently, and we have done that the last 2 years during COVID. And this past fiscal year, we actually operated with less special fund authority at the fairgrounds than the Fair Commission ever had. In fact, pre-COVID, I think they had 5.7 million special fund authority. We've been running it for less than 5 until this year. In COVID, when COVID hit, as a 100% special fund agency, and I was on the board and I looked at the numbers and all the events had canceled, the money that the Fair Commission had was going to run out in August of 2020. And we would, as a board, would have had to turn off the lights, send people home and put them on welfare. And we didn't want to do that. We wanted to keep it going. So we, with your support, took it over and ran it. And we have brought it back not only to survival, but to make it profitable again. And we have run it like a business. I want to give you some numbers. I'm going to pass something out here to show you what we have seen since COVID. Mr. Chairman. This is fairgrounds revenue and expenses, or budgeted expenses. So, you know, in fiscal year 2021, we broke this down by ticket sales, rental fees that are paid, and we're in the rental business on the fairgrounds. So people rent these buildings. They also pay related costs. They buy tickets. They come to the state fair. They go to the rodeo. And we just broke that down to show you revenue. So the left-hand column here is revenue coming in. When COVID hit, what used to be a $5.7 million special fund agency went to less than $4 million in revenue because everything stopped in March of that year. But we didn't stop. We kept going. We had the state fair. I took a butt chewing to have the state fair. We had it and we kept it alive, and we kept people working down there. And so you see the revenue we generated there. You see the rodeo that we had in 2021 generated $763,000. All of this is funds paid in by people who come to the fairgrounds to events. And so it's paying its own way. And so we had to float that boat that year. The next year, fiscal year 22, you see the increase. We doubled our number of ticket sales. We tripled our amount of rental fees. The state fair went up 50%. The rodeo went up over $300,000. So we had huge amounts of revenue coming in as we survived that pandemic, and we saw people come back out and do things again. Now, what I want to tell you is, and we did all that with a budget of about $4.5 million special funds authority. We don't need any more money. We need authority to fund the operations of this growing program, because we get to this year and you look, we have exceeded $3.7 million in ticket sales. We're nearing 4 million in ticket sales alone for events. Rentals of 2 million, that's double last year. The fair this year, and then the rodeo of 1 point. You see, the rodeo itself has doubled since fiscal year 21 in terms of revenue. We are the promoter for the fair and the rodeo, and those operations themselves pay the bills for so much of what happens on the fairgrounds. So this year we're looking at basically $9.4 million. Director Michael Laster is a businessman. He's running this fairgrounds like a business, and we are operating it. Every time we have these events, which are a lot of them are trademark events, there are costs. We have labor costs. We have to flip the buildings. We have to clean the buildings. We have dumpsters that come in. We have people we have to hire. A huge cost for us now is security. After the mud bug shooting of this past April, we have had to get a new contract with a security company, $300,000. We have begged, and I'm so proud of our Capitol Police who have shown up and done so much good work down on the fairgrounds. The Capitol Police, our Commissioner Sean Tyndall, Chief Bo Lucky, they get tremendous compliments from me. I will tell anybody that we wouldn't have been able to have the state fair this year if it were not for them. I'm convinced of that, and the security presence, but it all comes at a cost. Hines SO, our private security, JPD, they're involved as well. All that, in other words, it takes money to make money. So as we've seen these events grow, let me give you a real number. Our performance budget in the appropriation bill that has been there for how many years? 4 or 5 years. We are budgeted with a budget of special funds authority. This year, I think, was 5.2 million based on a 520-day event day. An event day is a day in which one of our buildings is rented, because that generates revenue. This year, fiscal year 23, we are going to hit 765 event days, far in excess, almost 50% more than our 520 event day. So the bottom line is the trademark is generating a lot of business. You came there we had the Gulf Coast reception there. Everybody saw it. Some people for the first time saw it. And when people are seeing this first class venue, they want to come back, and they're driving this rental fee increase that you see. They're driving the other revenues that you see, the Coliseum events, but the rodeo itself is doubled since 2020. And so just today, I signed a renewal of the Dixie National Rodeo to keep it in Mississippi. It's the largest event of its type east of the Mississippi River. We want to keep it in Mississippi. I signed a 4-year deal. We brought pamphlets about it. There'll be 200,000 people who will come to this event, and that's economic development for the state of Mississippi at zero cost to the taxpayers. So what we need, Mr. Chairman, is additional special fund authority, not money, but authority to fund the ongoing and growing operations of this growing venue. I brought 4 pages of events. Now, when the fairgrounds was built in the early 1900s, and our livestock facilities were constructed in 1953, 70 years ago, agriculture was pretty much the only thing happening down there. This is 4 pages of events that are non-agriculture events that are happening all the time. And I read some of them off: Harlem Globetrotters, dog show, Republic Services Truck Rodeo, consignment sales, MAIS, the high school basketball competitions. We have 35,000 people coming. This is good. It's growing. I'm just telling you, I think And I think Michael would tell you, the number one rented venue on the fairgrounds today is the Mississippi Trademark, and the legislature is to be commended for building it. And it has been a huge benefit for events and for the state of Mississippi. So I sent a letter over, and what we're asking this year is simply for an increase in special fund authority. We asked the same thing last year. When you go from 520 event days to 765 event days, it's a 47% increase in events. And to fund that growth, we need the authority in an additional amount of, the total of about, we estimate 6.9 million. Whereas this past year, we were operating at 5.2 authority. We need a 6.9 million authority that'll help us do all the things we need to do, including the Wi-Fi, the other projects, the security, and so forth. And we need another 1.7 million this fiscal year to fund the growing operations. And I want to emphasize, I'm proud of this. Most people don't know the fairgrounds doesn't get a dime of general fund, not a dime of taxpayer dollars. It's all special funds. And the reason is we're running it like a business, and that man over there gets the credit for it. Michael Lasseter, he wouldn't take the credit, but he deserves credit for it. He's not only caused the fairgrounds to survive, but to thrive, to the point we need additional authority.
Great. I appreciate your presentation on that. I've got a couple of questions with respect to those special funds, but I'm going to yield to my gentleman. So you've gone through and you've talked about the revenue that you're projecting for FY23. You've talked about your need for increase in spending fund or special fund authority.
Yeah.
Because of the additional project or the additional shows that you're bringing in, which is going to be reflected in the revenue. So where does the profit from these projects or from these shows go to, and which fund are they in, and how are those being used to offset, or show me how they're offsetting either your general fund support or your request for general fund support?
So they are going into the fund that runs the fairgrounds, and it pays the expenses and the increased expenses. I brought a piece of paper here, and every one of them, they're paying for themselves. They will bring in additional dollars. I brought a piece of paper here, attached to my letter, that shows the increased cost that we've had just looking at, here it is, looking at this fiscal year alone.
But you're still running in the black.
Yes, we are.
Okay, so
these are additional costs that some of them have doubled. I'm going to go over a few of them to show you. Law enforcement officers went from $20 per hour to $35 per hour. Private security per hour from $15 per hour to $25 per hour. You take those factors and you multiply them by the number of added events, and it just costs more. It's costing more money.
And Commissioner, and I'm not meaning to interrupt you, but I know we just have a limited amount of time, but I just want to make sure that, well, first of all, I fully anticipate that you're adjusting your event fees and your event costs to cover those additional expenses. And I understand that you need the spending authority to do that. You're still in the black somewhere.
We are.
And I'm just wanting to know where those funds, where are they accumulating, or how much are they accumulating, so that we can look at and see for this amount of investment or this amount of expenditure in special funds, we're generating X 144% or 110%, 112% of revenue for this.
So we had about $1.6 million to the black, to the good special funds last year. Those funds have gone into making necessary repairs. I'll give you one example. When the Jackson water crisis hit, we were the state staging area for that response, and we were happy to do that. We were filling up tanker trucks of water, and those tanker trucks tore up our midway 2 weeks before the state fair. It had to be repaired. There were repairs that had to be done. As a result of that, the traffic coming in, you notice we had to pave Mississippi Street going down. The reason being those heavy trucks tore that up. These are ongoing repair costs. And frankly, the infrastructure of the state fairgrounds is crumbling. So we do what we can to patch it. The south parking lot, DFA, thankfully, after the Tort Claims Board condemned it last year, DFA came in and ground it up. And the plan was to repave that, but they ran out of money to do that. So during the state fair, we were parking people, charging $5 per car to park on a ground up parking lot. It still needs to be fixed. All these costs are going to be part of improving the fairgrounds, keeping it operational. They're just operational costs. The infrastructure underground is dilapidated. It was 70 years ago, and we have constant plumbing costs. Our plumbing supplies, costs this year have jumped tremendously. Electrician costs, security costs, diesel fuel, energy per hour from 9 cents to 14 cents. That's a 56% increase. From gas, 19 cents to 50 cents. That type of thing. It's costing money to fund the operations. And so there's not a huge pot of money sitting there, but every dime that is spent is going into these operations to keep it profitable and to keep bringing these new projects in. And I'll tell you one last interesting thing. If you notice that condemned parking lot on the south, UPS rented that from us right after the state fair in October to try to respond to the supply chain crisis they were having in getting goods delivered. And they're paying us how much a day? $1,000 a month. But they require security, which we pay, but we're getting reimbursed for that. So it's money coming in, but also the costs going out to operate. And so we're still, yes, we're operating in the black, and we think this will continue to grow. But if we're going to keep growing, we've got to be able to have the authority to spend the funds to bring the shows in.
Are y'all, I noticed that there's some directional boring or some utility trucks that are parked along the western side of the fairgrounds parking lot. That's for a contractor, correct? That's not stuff that's ongoing on site, is it? I'm with you. That's fine. Okay. I didn't know. I just saw that. I didn't know if y'all were doing any other directional or some boring work or conduit work. And then is the demolition of the hotels, is that covered under your budget, or is DFA doing that?
It is actually all coming through DFA.
Okay.
That being said, we have been able to utilize it. We actually charge parking on the Dennery's parking lot during the fairgrounds. And you mentioned charging costs to enhance revenue to pay for these. We've started charging parking on a lot of events we used to not, just to cover these inflationary costs that we've had. But we generated revenue on that parking lot. We will. When is OYO going to be complete, Mr. Chairman, if I may? The parking lot for OYO should be done after the rodeo. Yeah. Yeah. Rather than buying gravel or hauling in dirt, we ground up the building, the Dennery's building, and made it into crushed concrete parking. And that's what we've done. We've done the same thing with OYO. The Regency Hotel is being negotiated with DFA. I'm out of that loop right now, but I know it's coming to conclusion. All of that is going to be revenue generating because we run out of parking. We run totally out of parking during the state fair and during Dixie National. And that's why we have livestock trailers parked in the mud that we had to pull out with the tractor after the rodeo's over. There's nowhere else to go. These parking lots are going to really help us, and they present an opportunity to do something very visionary in the future. And we want to talk with y'all about what you think that should be. But
Well, Commissioner, to Senator Moran's point, the mounds of ground up concrete that is over there on the Dennery, I think that's the Dennery site. That's,
It's
Do you-
parking lot.
do you own that or does the contractor own it?
We own it. It is the,
The dirt, I mean, I'm talking about the milled up concrete. Do you own that?
it is, it's owned by the, state fairgrounds. Yeah. It's the
Well, DFA, but the state of Mississippi
state of
owns
Mississippi.
it.
That's right.
And it's not something that was taken out of the contract.
No. It's not.
Okay. So you could remove some of those organics that you have on your soil,
We
some of your
could.
soil areas, and use that to firm up your parking pads or your ancillary parking that you would need on the fairgrounds itself.
If there's any left over, and there's some drainage issues over there we're gonna have to deal with. We would like to pave that or concrete that, but it's a little premature to do that till we have all the property together and look at the bigger picture. We've hired an architect who has advised us on kind of what to do with, as we move forward, and we're gonna be talking to him about that as we move ahead. I think it's 30 acres. I think it's right at 30 acres. Yeah, and it's frontage property on I-55. Now, the talk is this one lake project that's they say is coming to fruition. They expanded. I hear it is, I hear it's not. I don't know, but I heard the Corps engineers are still looking at that. The point being, somebody has a plan to put a lake on the other side of the highway over there, and that would require a lot more discussions about how to, because we're in a floodplain. The entirety of the state fairgrounds is in a floodplain. That's why it became the state fairgrounds. We've got something will have to give on that. Yeah. And we still got the watermark.
Commissioner, I want to go back to your automobiles real quick.
Yeah.
You have 22 automobiles, that you're asking to replace, to be replaced. How many total vehicles do you have in your department right now?
That's going to be a Joette. How many total vehicles? 140.
So this 22 just represents the ones that are above 150,000 miles and or 7 years. Is that correct?
That's correct. We've still got some Crown Victoria.
And do you have any request for ARPA funds?
We do not. We do not. My request is, Mr. Chairman, just to, and we made this request last year, if we could get that special fund authority for the fairgrounds, everything else we're actually operating both agencies for less than the original version of the two separate Fair Commission and Department of Agriculture. So we think that'll get us where we need to be. You know, if this program continues to grow and we have twice as many events, then we'll have to look at it again. But these are the events. Most of these were non-existent 2 years ago, and they've come back in a big way. And we're proud of that, but we need the authority to keep the operation going the way it should be. Comic-Con is coming to town. Comic is huge. I had no idea there were so many people interested in Comic-Con.
Yeah, we've had that on the coast for a number of years, and it's quite interesting.
It is.
Coast Con,
People dress up like superheroes by the thousands.
thousands. Okay, lastly, was it this current fiscal year or was it last fiscal year that you had to make an emergency procurement or an emergency expenditure of funds to do some repairs to one of the buildings that's on the northwest side of the site? And I forgot what that really old building is, but it was a staging area for some crime stuff. Was that?
The armory,
last
the
year?
armory, that's
Armory,
the
yes.
armory, that's right. That was last, that's right. That was last, it was in April. And we completed that project. We did it for the purpose of use as a security command center office. Sweatman is operating in it right now. all.
But that was last fiscal
That was
year
in
and
April?
not this fiscal year,
It was
correct?
in April, that's right.
Okay.
And we
I just-
finished that out.
I just wanted to know where that was.
We just, I can tell you, we just received approval of Archives and History grant to complete the windows and restore it to phase 2. It was 1927. Every soldier who mustered out of Mississippi for World War II, I'm told, went through that building. And now it is used for a security office. It was invaluable. We've offered it as a Capitol Police station or highway patrol station. It is available to law enforcement, and that's what it's for. The more law presence we have on the fairgrounds, the better our operations will go.
I appreciate your time today. Thank you very
I
much.
thank you, and I brought
Look
you.
forward to working with you, sir.
Same here, Mr. Chairman. I brought you, our market bulletin staff published this history of the department. It has some history of the fairgrounds and how things got to be the way they are today. And I hope you enjoy it. And, we're selling those books, through the market bulletin service, $25 a piece. They're paying for themselves, in other words, but I thought it might help. It's a lot of good history about how the fairgrounds was established and why back when. Thank y'all. Appreciate y'all. And we look forward to working with y'all this fiscal year. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you, sir. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yep.
No, they're not the dollars that they're taking. That's not the revenue that they're taking in. That's the expenses that they're having to incur throughout the fiscal year to provide for those events. And so they're making the revenue, which you'll have a revenue number, but to get that revenue, they're having to expend a certain amount of money, and that additional expense is the increase in special funds that they're asking for.
That's right.
So as they go from 500 events to 765, then, they're going to incur some incremental cost increases for expenditures, and that's the additional spending authority that they're looking for.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's expensive to operate. But hey, it's growing. We're gonna do, by the way, we're on track to create another record fixing action. Correct. Thank you.
Yeah, come on in. Please just sit right over here on this side if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, we got one. How are you? Good, sir. How are you? Hey, don't forget 3:30. My email. What? Please let me. It's a surety. No. Is it C? I mean, what's this matter? Oh, but we use that. Yeah, but I got it. Just, thank you. That's right. Come on in. Oh. Yes, sir. Mark Smith and Mark Scott Delano. Talk to the phone. Yes, sir. So, sir, I'm saying, hey, Tom. What can you say?
I'm sorry that we are running just a little bit behind. So we'll have about 15 minutes together, get y'all in and out of here as quick as we can.
Yes, sir.
Want to remind you that we are being recorded and we are being streamed on, I believe it's YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So if you would, when you make any comments, just do it into the microphone so that everyone will be able to hear. But I'd like to welcome you and thank you very much for coming. I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having us here today to explain our budget request. Since we only have 15 minutes, I'll run through as quickly as possible. The first page is 731, which is our state office staff. As you're aware, we have two separate appropriations. We have one for the state office staff and we have one for the homes. I just listed on there the past several years what we were appropriated this year. We're asking for level funding on general funds. We are asking for a one-time capital expense fund request for $7.2 million. 6.2 million of that is for the additional cost for the Jackson Veterans Home. That last year you gave us $19.6 million. So we're needing $6.2 million more dollars to finalize our 35% of the state's cost for that home. Part of that is due to inflation costs, and we have the architect and engineer firm to validate this number to make sure that it is correct. And we're asking for $1.04 million for infrastructure. The infrastructure in our homes is really needing repair. Most of our homes are 20 to 25 years old. As a matter of fact, yesterday the freezer went out in the Jackson home. And so we're getting price quotes now. We had the food service vendor actually brought us a freezer truck to use until we can get it fixed. The price quotes we got this morning was $9,200 to patch it, and it's $26,000 to replace it. And we just had the same experience with the home in Oxford, and we just patched it at this time, but it'll need to be replaced too. But all of the washers, dryers, boilers, all those things, most of them have never been replaced. And we're just asking for some one-time money to bring that stuff up to standard, be more energy efficient. We're paying around $40,000 a month per home just in electricity costs. So we're hoping that we can get those upgraded, plus bring them up to standard because all of them are 20-something years old. They've washed anywhere from 8 to 12 times a day, 7 days a week. So they're getting pretty worn out. And some of them, as a matter of fact, in Oxford, they're down to one washing machine. And one of the big issues is when they break, getting repair parts. Just the time it takes to get those things is really hampering us on that process. The food service equipment, we just recently had to replace the dishwasher in Oxford. The other ones are in need of much repair. The HVAC replacement, the chillers are old and they're starting to break. We had the one in Oxford, it's hard to find repair parts for it. So we got with DFA, Glenn Cornbreck at DFA, and we got a mechanical engineer to give us cost estimates on what it would cost to fix those. And the price was approximately $4.2 million per home. We turned that over to Glenn and DFA, and he said that hopefully he could get the funds this year in his budget to at least replace one a year, and over the next 3 years, hopefully have them all three replaced, because we would not want to replace the one in Jackson pending the new home that we hope to get moved in the next couple of years. We have some IT upgrades just around the agency that need to be done. Some of the equipment that some of our staff are working with was donated from another agency, and we just need to get that updated. The Burial Equity Act is something that's on the table. We're still waiting for final guidance from National Cemetery Administration in Washington. The next page, just some construction projects that we have currently going on. We have a $2.7 million project in Collins for a renovation. The Tradition Home is $56 million project. That's just the construction cost part of that. That's not including the things that we'll need, like linens and pots and pans, and we don't have the luxury of, like we will in Jackson, where we can move the stuff that the staff needs every day to work with. We can just move it to the new Jackson home. This home will be standing up from ground zero, so everything in it will have to be purchased for new. The Jackson home is estimated at $72 million. The state was gracious enough last year to give us 19.6, but we'll need an additional 6.2 to make sure that we meet our 35%. The federal government will give us their 65%. We work with DFA and LBO on the land part to where we would like to move the home. That's House Bill 422. And I think it's going through the process. As we work through there, we should know hopefully in April if we get the federal funding. When they come out, due to the water issues in Jackson, we really pushed hard with the federal VA in Washington to move us up on the priority list to get that home out of Jackson because of the water crisis. We're also working on a project now to because the requirement is we have to have water for our veterans out there to meet the VA requirements. So we're working on a project now to come up with a system similar to what UMMC has, where the plumbers will go out and make some connections, but it looks like that's going to cost us about $50,000 to get that done. And then in order to hook the 6,200 gallon tankers and all the pumps and stuff that we'll need for fire suppression and those type things will be another between $45,000 and $50,000 a month cost. But we have to do this to make sure that our residents are taken care of.
Why is it, I'm sorry,
Yes, sir.
I need to interrupt you on this.
Yes, sir.
$50,000 a month?
Yes, sir. By the time you get the tankers, then you get the electric pumps, because the fire suppression system has to have a certain amount of pressure on it. We have to have those pumps, and we don't want to buy them because we have no use for them after we leave there and hopefully move to the new home. But to rent all of that stuff is similar to what UMMC is paying right now for the same thing when that happens. So we're working with them. I talked to the Mississippi National Guard, the director of logistics there. They have 4 water tankers at Camp Shelby that we could use and hook up, because according to the contractor, all the connections are the same. We're using about 92,000 gallons of water a month. So we would have to continuously replenish the water that they use in the home for showers. And that was a big concern last time when I talked to Senator Seymour, is when it's out for 5 or 6 days, we have no way to bathe the residents, which then in turn creates issues with wound care and all the other issues with our veterans. So we're working through those processes. DFA is helping us, and we have mechanical engineers who are validating all the requirements to make sure that the pumps that we will need have what we need to make sure that the fire suppression system will work. I think it's 50 PSI. So we're working through those projects now to hopefully get that done pretty quick, at least get the connection set up, because even if we got the money, it's still going to be 2 or 3 years before the new Jackson home is built. So we're going to have something to get that done. On the next page, the funding request. The first one is a $416,000 capital expense fund deficit. That's for an ACA penalty from the IRS for agency nurses that we have, just like other agencies. Fortunately, the AG's office has worked diligently with their contractor from Butler Snow to reduce this, because it started out at $1.2 million. Last week, we got 2020 bill in, which is also $1.2 million. We worked with the Attorney General's office, and I've communicated with Max to, we were trying to figure out if there's ever going to be a stop to this. But according to what they said, there's not anytime soon. So our legal counsel and our HR people are trying to set up a meeting with Butler Snow, the people that are actually doing this, to try to figure out, is there any way that we can reduce these costs somehow? So hopefully that'll happen quickly. We're asking for $1.2 million in a transfer fund bill. Back in 2016, there was a project done at the Kilmichael Cemetery, and the bill came in, so the agency paid it with general funds. The federal government sent us a reimbursement for that. Well, they put it back in the grant. The grant closed and we couldn't get the money out. So the money's been sitting there since 2016, and we asked for a transfer bill to get that money out of there so we can spend it on the things that we need to take care of. The other two things I've already talked about, because of our facilities are being old. The next page on the nursing homes, due to nursing costs and fuel costs and everything has gone through the roof. I just want to kind of give you an idea of what our expenditures and revenue for each home are. We don't receive any money from the state to run our homes. It's all on a per diem basis. But with the agency nursing costs, we have 16 contracts with different agency nurses, and the costs range from on the low side of $40 an hour to the high side of $112 an hour. And all of that is depending on the agency having the nursing staff availability to provide somebody that we need at that time. As we work through the process, the $18 million, $7 million of that was paid because the tradition home came in $7 million over projected cost. And the $2.7 million renovation at Collins, $2 million of that was added on there too. So those funds were taken out of the special funds that we have for the nursing homes. Those costs won't be there again. So we're working very diligently to make sure that we try to stay within our limits, but with fuel cost and everything else as high as it is, it's really hard to make ends meet. And I listed on there, we have two different types of disability ratings. We have 70%, over 70%, which gets the greater amount of money, and then we have a less than 70%. And you'll notice that the greater than 70%, those numbers are based on geographic location, and those come from the federal VA as to how much percentage we get from reimbursement. The next slide is just one that I put in there just for demonstration purposes. If you notice the first line is on the top slide, it says veterans 70%. There's 967 days of care. If you look at Oxford, the same line is 454 days of care. But at the end of the day, because there's so many, we get so much more money for greater than 70%. There's a difference every month in the revenue that the home gets of a couple $100,000. So we've sent our claims people to every home to reevaluate the residents that we currently have. And we've instituted a process. So when they're admitted, that our claims people that work at the VA regional office review those to make sure that we are getting every rating disability that we can as high as we can possibly get it. The next slide. Some of the things that we need is vehicle replacement in some of the homes. Some of the homes have 2004 vehicles. Last summer, we had an issue with in Kosciuszko, where we had a busload full of veterans on one of the older buses in the summertime that it quit running. So it was sitting on the side of the highway. Luckily, we had the backup bus. We could go pick them up. But that was one of those situations that we really don't need to get into if we can help it. If we can buy new buses. One of the things with the buses is 2 years ago, we were able to buy 2 buses for $112,000. Right now, we can buy 1 bus for $100,000. That's one of the issues that we're running into, capitalizing on our funds. We're gonna have to buy vehicles for the new tradition home, as I mentioned, on the linens and other things. It's start up from scratch. Costs due to inflation, nursing costs, COVID outbreak costs. If we have a COVID outbreak cost in the homes, that increases our nursing requirements because of the extra care that we have to give those residents. Increased food service costs. When the Jackson home gets without water, then we have to revert to disposable items, which increases the cost for those, for bottled water or any other kind of water that we can get our hands on. Even to the point of it requires additional dumps of the dumpsters because you're creating so much more waste. The cost to stand up the tradition home, the linens, the food service utensils, anything that's not included in the construction contract will be the responsibility of us to procure to open the home. Increased fuel costs, as we all know, they've doubled, and we have buses that run all day, just about every day, taking our veterans to medical appointments, taking them to Walmart, taking them to wherever they need to go, so we can meet their needs. And increased maintenance costs, infrastructure and vehicles, the repair costs on the infrastructure stuff is just slowly just eating us up. because the stuff is old and we need to do some preventive maintenance and upgrade and get it to where it'll last the next 20 years. And if we have some one-time money, it'd be a great opportunity to get all that stuff upgraded for the next 20, 25 years. So we can continue to take care of our heroes. The funding request, tradition startup. The way the homes work is when the state pays the initial cost, and then we file a reimbursement to the VA, and it's based on the disability rating of each resident. We will need some money to stand up the tradition home because it'll be several months before we start generating any revenue after we get residents in there, and we'll have to bring staff on early. We'll have to do in-service training. We'll have to do all the things we need to get them stood up. The stand-up cost, we're asking for that to cover the linen, the forks, the spoons, the ladles, and all that stuff. We have part of our staff is working every day to finalize those lists and get them to contractors to see exactly how much it's going to cost. But we're finding out slowly but surely the $3 million is probably not going to cover all of it. Because when you look at lifts and you look at what the pharmacist has to have in their areas, I'm not sure that that's going to quite do it. General funds, due to the extreme cost of everything, the VA recently raised the reimbursement rates 5.1%, but we all know that inflation is way higher than that. So we're not able to completely meet all of the expenses to match the reimbursement. So we're asking for a one-time $6 million general fund appropriation to cover us in case the costs continue to rise and we don't have enough special funds to cover that because of the over expenditures that I mentioned several slides ago. And health insurance increased $25 per employee. We'd like to maybe get that added to our budget to cover the cost, and hopefully it won't go up again next year, which eats into our budget because that's our portion of what we have to pay. But I know that was real quick and fast, but sir, pending your questions, this concludes my briefing.
I've got one question real quick before I turn it over to Senator Seymour. The $6 million of general funds you're asking for operating cost associated with the other homes. Are you just asking for that for a one-time, just to plus up your account so that you can run or fund your negative rollover for a couple of years? Is that in essence what you're doing?
That's what we're hoping. But just to kind of give you an idea of the expenses have been over what the reimbursement rates are. Since July, our expenses have been $3.5 million more than the revenue that we're bringing in.
Okay.
So it's about 500 to 600,000 a month that is costing us. Nursing costs are through the roof and everything else. So
Understand.
we're not getting enough money to cover our.
So here's what I would like to do. I'd like to ask you to give me a little bit more detail of the $6 million. And I know you're asking for a one-time request, but I don't know what the true dollar amount is that you expect for this coming fiscal year.
Yes.
But I would like to look at what your projections look like.
Yes,
And instead of just taking a swag at it and say this will do good for a couple of years,
Yes.
let's take a look at that and dig that down a little bit deeper and for us to understand it.
Yes, sir. We have all those numbers. It will take us but just a minute
All
to give you that.
All right, I'm gonna yield my time over to Senator Seymour for a few questions that I'm sure he'll have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's a good.
First off, how many of the total beds do we have filled right now?
Right now, we have 477 beds filled.
All right, with the problem that we have well, let me back up. You're doing remodeling. I've
Yes.
been down to Collins, seen that, and you kind of shuffled some of your veterans to accommodate that. Is there any way possible, instead of taking in expansion, more veterans to allow them to transfer out to Oxford, wherever we're lacking beds, and basically get out of this home? And the secondary question of this, when you are able to get the funds, how long are we talking to a turnkey completion date on a 2 years?
Yes, so we had a meeting with DFA and the architect either Monday or Tuesday this week. It's all running together, but if we can get it, it's about 3 years because we'll have to get the money. The state's been gracious enough. We already got the state money. Then when we get the federal money in April, the architect's already using part of the state money to do the A&E part of it. So as soon as he gets that done, then we can put it out for bid and Glenn and his people at DFA, Glenn Cornbreak and his staff can start working that process. But it's about 3 years.
3 years.
To get everything completed. Yes, sir.
And where's our ratio of nurses to veterans?
We're required to maintain 3.25. We're maintaining that as far as we know every month. We track that every day. The issue that we have is having the nurses, the agency nurses are what's really costing us the money. But on the other side of that coin is when you look at what the state's paying our nurses, and then you look at the health insurance that we pay and the PERS max that we pay and all the other things, the money's not really that much different. But what we're finding out when we interview nurses and other staff within the agency is they want the cash in hand. They'll worry about retirement tomorrow.
I mean, it needs to be in-house. I mean, I've been down there, I've seen the paddy wagon pull up. Your contract nurses, if there's extra meds laying around, y'all got very good security and it is, y'all catch them when they do it, but you wouldn't think that you would have that.
One of the
that field of work, but has the bill we passed last year or the year before last, as far as the nursing grant program, is that paying any dividends?
we haven't seen it, but we were fortunate enough to get an additional grant from the VA where they paid 50%. We paid 50% for tuition assistance for our nurses. And we were able to capitalize. It cost us $48,000, but we were able to pay for $96,000 in student loans for our nurses. We were needing a director of nursing in Jackson and an assistant director of nursing in Jackson for several months. But when they found out about that program, they immediately came on board. So it's helping us, solve that problem. It's just kind of slow getting them to come to work for us. But, I agree with the agency nursing part. We just had a survey by the VA in Jackson. There were several issues that they wrote up, and several of them were nursing issues with medications and stuff. Every write-up that we got was with an agency nurse because they don't have the same ownership that you and I have with that home.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions? Just make a general comment. This is no reflection on you because I know you didn't ask to be put in this situation, but it's incumbent upon us, all of us, to make sure that you're able to flush the commodes, that you're able to change bedpans, give baths. It's just like any other hospital. And I'm committed to working with you to find a temporary solution so that we do not have those issues. And I'm not familiar enough with all the costs that are associated with a temporary water supply, but I just think that $50,000 a month seems extremely high.
Yes.
And I'm going to work with you. I'm going to try to I'd like to have some more detail on that.
Yes, sir.
To understand what those costs are, but I commit to working with you to find something now for your backup water supply so that you're able to do that. And we're not, that's just unacceptable. And everyone in this room would agree. Everybody in this building agrees that that's unacceptable for something like that to happen. And committed to working with you to make sure that doesn't occur again.
Yes, sir. We're waiting on the final information from the mechanical engineer. He was meeting with the state fire marshal to make sure that the pressure that the pumps put on would be satisfactory to meet the fire suppression system. So that's the kind of detail that we're going into, and we're working with DFA, Glenn Cornbreck and his crew to make sure that all of that meets the state requirements. But as soon as we get that, I will get that over here too.
I appreciate it. Thank you
Yes,
very
sir.
much.
Mr. Chairman, one last
Yes.
thing I forgot to follow up on.
Yes,
On the
sir.
ACA penalty,
Yes, sir.
that's for the year
It's 2019,
2019.
and we just got 2020.
17
Yes, sir.
to 19. So we're just lagging.
We just got 2020. Yes, sir. And we're hoping that the Attorney General's office can work their magic and get it reduced down.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anything else?
So, sir, we owe you a breakdown on the general funds and what we get from the mechanical engineer on the water.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, special, and also, let me ask you this, because I've asked everybody else. Do you have any applications in for ARPA funds?
We had talked to Glenn about using ARPA funds to fix the chillers and stuff that he's working on. But he came back and he did some investigating, and he said that since that we went in when COVID first started and did some ionization filters or something,
Mhm.
that we weren't entitled to the ARPA funds, because that was my first request, was could we get the ARPA funds? But he said since that modification had been done, that we could not. So that's the reason we asked him to add it to his budget. And if he can do one home a year for the next 3 years, that would get everything completely replaced from the chillers all the way to the units in the rooms. Because in Oxford, when their chiller went down, we had to look nationwide, and the vendor told us if it goes down again, these parts are not available. And it's a 40-week minimum wait time for the chiller to come.
Yeah.
And that's the
Familiar
problem
with
that
that.
I'm running into. Yes, sir.
VAVs aren't much better, those units that are in the room, the
Yes, sir.
variable valves. Yeah, okay, thank you. There's no other comments, no other questions. We'll go ahead and consider this to be closed. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.